Lena, the next thing I want to show you is probably my most favorite thing Excel does.
Okay.
You can take large amounts of data and come up with tables that total on more than one field. So if I wanted to look at what is shipped from and what is shipped to and get quantities by both categories, I can do that. And it's called a pivot table. And then when I put it in there, if I decide, I want to look at other information, I can pivot the information around and choose other things to calculate by.
Oh, okay.
It's a great tool. I think it's an underused tool because a lot of people don't understand it. But once you get a feel for it, it is fantastic.
Well, let's look at it.
So we're here in our large database, the shipping file, and we have our active cell selected within the data. So let's go to the Insert tab on our ribbon.
Okay.
Notice to the far left on the Insert tab, we have a Tables group, and within that we have the Pivot Table feature.
Okay.
If you click on the drop down there, we can do a pivot table or pivot chart. We'll look at pivot charts later. First, I want you to get a feel for the pivot tables. So we're going to click on Pivot Table.
All right.
Now, what happens is Excel is smart enough to say, okay, look. Oh, here's a blank row or a blank column. Look. Oh, there's a blank row. It'll go and find the range of data by itself.
All right.
So it's picked up our cell range, and we're perfectly good with this. We know this is the correct cell range for our database. And the next thing we want to do is choose where we want the pivot table. Now, you do have the option to put it on the existing worksheet, but I do not recommend that. I recommend you put it on a new worksheet so you can work on it separately from your existing data.
Okay.
So we're going to stay with the new worksheet. Click OK. It
Whoa.
creates a new sheet tab. Yeah, whoa, isn't that cool? Creates a new sheet tab. And over on the right, you have a pivot table field list.
All right.
All right. So you have various fields available to you, and these are the very fields or columns that we have in the shipping spreadsheet.
Okay, yeah, those look familiar.
So one of the things we were talking about is maybe I want to do quantities by ship from and ship to. So let's select ship from and ship to. Now, ship from, notice it showed up over there.
Okay.
And then ship to. Now here, it's kind of interesting. I can put in that information and I can see Atlanta ship from and then all the locations it ships to.
Okay.
Billing ship from and all the locations it ships to. Let's go on and choose quantity. And you'll see it immediately gives you quantities. Now this is what you consider a one-dimension pivot table. Because if you'll notice over in your pivot table bar on the right, we have row labels, ship from and ship to. And we have values. Any column that we choose that has a value in there ends up over there in the values section.
Okay.
Let's give it column labels. So let's take the ship to down in our row labels and just click and drag it up there. Notice your mouse had changed to that crosshair and drop it into the column labels.
Oh.
Now notice that I have my ship from in my column A, and in row 4 I have all my ship to locations. So I can break the data down a little bit differently here and see it either in a column and a row type display, or I can compact it like we had a moment ago. It just depends on what you're trying to do here.
Okay.
Now I could change my values. Maybe I want to find the average. Notice down there in values it says sum of quantity. If you click on the drop down where it said sum of quantity, and I can go to value field settings in this menu, and I can choose to count or average or so forth. So some of those same functions we've looked at in the function modules. We'll just click OK here and come back out, but I wanted you to see that that's available to you.
Okay.
All right? A couple of things to know about this. I want you to just click outside the data, maybe on,
Whoa, we lost our field list.
You lost your field list. Now click back inside your data. It'll pop
there
right
it
back
is.
up, but here's the thing. Notice that that field list has an X that closes the window. Some people do this, and then they're like, where'd my field list go? So let's click that. We do have, when our active cell is within the range of the pivot table, we have a special tab on our ribbon, a PivotTable Tools tab. If you go up there and you click on Options, you'll notice that you have several options available to you. And yep, you found it already. The group called Show has the field list, so we can select that and bring the field list right back up. So if you happen to turn it off, you can turn it back on. And this is one of those tools that I really, really suggest to people that they play with.
Okay.
Let's do a little different. Let's take ship to out. So turn off ship to.
All right.
And let's add date instead.
Let's see. Date.
And there you have it by dates. If you want, you can pull the date or the ship from up into the column. And now I can look at it by date.
Okay.
And in a later module, we're going to look at how I can group those dates maybe by months or by weeks, so I can maybe shorten the amount of data that's running across the spreadsheet.
Yeah, this one looks pretty long here.
Yes, it is fairly long. So often in a date category, you might start grouping things together. And we'll look at that again in a moment.
Okay.
One other thing you need to know about pivot tables is that when you run a pivot table, it takes the data on your initial spreadsheet and puts it into a cache file. And that cache file is where this data is running from.
Okay.
So let's go back over to our promotion sales worksheet. And let's just change something. Let's see, what are we doing right now? We're doing quantities, aren't we?
Mm-hmm.
Let's change the quantity there on row 17 to 100. Okay, so that was Tacoma Park in Newark. It was December 16th. Let's go back to our sheet 1. So let's look at December 16th. And notice the total is not close to 100. Move your mouse up a little bit and we can see the total's 12.
Okay.
It's still looking at the original cache of data. I have to get it to refresh the data.
Okay.
So I have to tell it to go back and pull data again. So I go back up to my ribbon where I have my PivotTable Tools. If you don't see PivotTable Tools, what might be going on?
I'm not in my pivot table.
Right. Make sure your active cell's in your pivot table.
Okay.
So go back up to PivotTable Tools, click on Options, and about halfway across the ribbon, you'll see a Data section,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a Refresh button. So just click on that.
Oh.
And notice now on December
It
16th,
showed
we
up.
have a different quantity. Okay?
All right. That's good to know.
So that's a beginning on pivot tables, and in a later module, we'll look at the grouping and so forth.
That is a great way for us to do some analyzing of our data. So I'm really excited about using this for our large databases.
Yeah, I cannot express to you how helpful this is to most people once they understand it.